I'm currently secretary of the UCU Council, which is one of these checking bodies that was in that little Ask video that they put out, I think, yesterday. And I'm running for AAO, as Alberto already said. Do you want platform as well, or just like personal introduction?
No, that's good.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Next we have Aysu.
I'm a second semester student, and I'm probably gonna do law. Although since I'm second semester, I don't have much of an opinion about it yet. And I'm running as an AAO, and I'm not, I think, quote unquote late, but it was later that I publicly declared this. But I'm excited, and background-wise, I'm half Japanese, half Turkish, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Elisa?
Yes. Hi. Just as Aysu, I've also declared that I wanted to run for AAO a little bit later. I'm a fourth semester student doing a humanities major. I am not quite clear yet on which exactly, because I've followed a bunch of tracks and I'm looking for the right combination that I haven't figured out quite yet. And yes, that's about it.
Okay, and Sam? Sam, can we hear you? Okay, so we're having a bit of trouble listening to Sam, so we'll move on with Irene.
Yeah, so my name is Irene. I am running for Student Assessor, which is a different position from the AAOs. Is actually the position, the person of ASK that is going to be in most governing bodies of UCU. So if I'll be elected, I'll be in the management team, the college board, and also in the board of studies next to ASK. So I'm really looking forward to that, hopefully. Besides that, I am a second year student here. I'm studying economics, politics, psychology, and I'm doing a minor in statistics. Yeah, what else are we talking about? I think this is it.
Yeah, thanks, and we'll try again with Sam, and if not, we'll kind of change our arrangement here with the computer.
Sam?
So Sam, can you give us your pitch?
Can I just...
Yeah.
Sam?
Okay.
Hello?
Yes.
Right here?
Yeah.
Audible. Okay. Nice. So I'm audible, just to confirm?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm far away, as you can notice from the Skype hassle. But I'm currently in India on exchange, really exploring a new world, which is amazing for me because I'm a big nerd in Eastern philosophies as well. But I have a long weekend here, and I've actually spent about 2 days a week for the past 3 months informing myself as much as possible about ASK. And yeah, getting my campaign started and just really getting into this whole new academic student council thing, because I'm just a very big nerd for studies, and my computer is making weird sounds, so I'm going to turn it off. But yeah, I'm just simply ready to start working to really improve our education and hope that we can make some moves in that direction soon.
Okay, thank you, Sam. And with that, we can begin with our conversation. So the first point that we're going to discuss, it's going to be similar to the way the broadcast went yesterday, and that is, do we want to get all of your visions for ASK? So what is the purpose of the Academic Student Council, and what do you intend to do in order to fulfill that purpose? So whomever wants to begin, you can just go for it.
Yeah, I think, if I may, what is the most important thing with ASK is to really be a megaphone for students, to really be as small and as transparent as possible, a medium between College Hall and students. Because what I've noticed in the way that College Hall talks about ASK, they really think, that's a sort of student opinion, which is why it's really, 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 really important that everybody in ASK really realizes how much they ought to bring students into contact with teachers and with College Hall and represent the student opinion, because there's this duality in ASK where on the one hand you run on your own platform, you have your own cool ideas, and you do that one. But I think the core task apart from that platform, apart from those ideas, is really making sure that the student voice is being heard at UCU, just because there are so many things where you think this is public knowledge on campus, but then the management team doesn't know.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think Ask is a way to channel the voices of the students in a coordinated way to College Hall. And I think that it's really important that Ask is visible in that sense on campus, and that students are able to approach us, but also that we are actively seeking for the voices of the students. And as Ask, I think it's important to get a clear vision on how we're going to translate that into action in College Hall.
That was Irene. Sam?
I completely agree with what has been said before. And I think we're talking a lot about this direction of bringing what students say into College Hall, which is extremely important and probably one of the most important things about Ask. But I also simply want to stress that I think this should be a bi-directional function where we also really start trying to take what is in College Hall and translate it back to the students. Because the thing is that as a student, sometimes it's hard to see what happens in the management of College Hall and what is going on. And so over the past about 1.5 years, I've known I wanted to run for Ask. And so I've been really talking to many teachers and also teachers who are higher up in functions. And if you start to kind of dig a little bit, you notice that there's actually a lot of stuff that is happening in College Hall that is affecting the students a lot without us knowing it. So I think in Ask, one of the biggest priorities would also be to make sure that students know what is actually happening up there in the big management, so we can really have a conversation instead of just shouting one side.
Thank you. Aysu?
I think it's also important that, you know, we choose a school for college and then we just decide to go there, and then the education is already set. It's not like we choose a school that is most applicable for us, but it's not probably perfect. But I think it's our choice and our capability that we can change that reality. And then with platforms such as Ask, I think we're only able to do that because schools with academic councils is probably not affecting the education and how it's structured via the students. It's just teachers doing their own thing and the students are just there. And I think education is more of like an interactive thing, not just only in the classroom, but all the time.
Thank you. And Elisa?
I think something that hasn't been stressed a lot now is also that Ask is there to communicate to the students what rights they have, what additional information there is about the tracks, the courses, what they can do with their academic life here, and also, even though that's not the main purpose, after that. And just this bringing academia, which is here a very complex and complicated system, closer to the student in a more understandable and approachable way. I think that's also a big function of Ask.
Well, thank you. And now we're going to go to the specific roles that you're all running for. So we're going to begin with the Academic Affairs Officers, or AAOs. We have 4 candidates for that here. And I would like to begin with Aysu, if you want to start.
Yeah, for sure.
So since you're the first one, please just very briefly explain what the AAO is. And then just, make your pitch. Just briefly address specifically in that role what you think is important. And from this point onward, anyone can comment. So there will be a structure to the rest of the show, but it is important for conversations to be started. So if at any point you feel like you have something to comment, if you disagree with something, or if you agree but you would like to add something, you can do that. You can all do it. So Aysu, you may begin.
So AAO is Academic Affairs Officer, and then it's basically 3 people in Ask, which they will each focus on one of the majors we have, which is social sciences, sciences, and humanities. And then these things, both, like all three of the majors are quite different. And they have their own requirements and own things to do. And what's important is that I think, we are the same school, but there are certain distinctive things for each major. That's why we need one person for each to explain the things to students and hold focus groups, etc. And then that's what I think of it. And the reason I want to do it is one of the main reasons is actually that no first years are running. And then I think every year is really different. And I think every year should be represented in the board. And I think it's important because every year is super different. And then next year, I think, although the second years running right now have been through their second years, the second year of next year is going to be different, which is my year. And I think that's important as well, that years are represented, just like majors are represented with 3 people.
And so we get into issues. What would you do in this place? What do you think should be done?
I think it really depends on what AAO I become. I don't have like a specific preference or anything, but I think that each major has their own ways to develop themselves. I know for the easiest example is the science major that always gets a lot of complaints and everything, and they have so much more to improve, and so much stuff can be done about the tracks of science and the communication skills of the science teachers. And so I think each major has its own thing. And I'd like to focus, like take them into hand and sit down and write down every track and see how every track is doing and how the major overall is doing.
Okay, great. Sam?
So question was what AAO does and what is most important, right?
So what the AAO does was already, I allowed Aysu to do it because she was the first one to speak. Just tell us, why'd you propose? Basically, this is your opportunity to give your pitch more specifically for the role of AAO.
So I think I'd be some reasons why I think I'd be a suitable AAO are because, for one, AAOs need to communicate with many different bodies, teachers, UCU council, dean, management team, etc. And I've been specifically trained to be able to do so and be able to really talk to people and identify their interests and see how to get to the place where we all want to go in the end. That's one. For another, I've been a teacher for over 5 years. I've been a tutor for many students, started with guitar, went on to academics. And I really try to create an as engaging class for my students as possible. So that means that I have both a student's perspective and a teacher's perspective if it comes to moments when I need to help students see what trouble is they're running into in the class, and then help teachers find a way to really get over this trouble. And lastly, I've just been very informed. So I've actually spent the last weeks reading through a lot of UCUC notes that I think Loudon's made as well. But just to read up on what has been happening, I've kept close ties to teachers and the current council. And so I simply just know what is going on. And I think that's very important as an AAO.
Thank you, Sam. Elisa?
Yeah, the reason why I'm campaigning for AAO specifically is that a lot of the ideas that I have are closely related to the day-to-day life of students / to the day-to-day teaching classes. Sam is making weird noises again. The AAO position is the one that works most closely with the teaching body, each of them with a different department. But the position I want to take is to really look at the problems as they are now in our academic culture, and if there are ways to maybe not solve them immediately, but alleviate them, make structures clearer, get information through to students more clear. And for that, you do have to communicate between the students and the teachers and have a closer relationship to the students.
What
the
is
specific
one
track.
problem with UCU's academic culture?
One of them is that a lot of information about the tracks and what you need to do to major in specific tracks / which courses here you need to take to be able to get into a major. This information is quite readily available, but students are not taught how to look for that information. They don't exactly know how to find it. A lot of students just look through the courses planner during their midterm evaluation form fillings, and they try to piece things together through that, and the courses planner doesn't give you information about the track. So having a better, more informed view on these things is something that should be passed on, because the information is already there. It's just not clear in the academic structure as it is right now how to get to that information.
Can I respond to that?
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, I think I agree with that completely. But one of the things I'm specifically is, this is actually quite personal as well, because I was planning on completing a philosophy track and then go on to do a philosophy master's after UCU. But I didn't plan on doing epistemology and 20th century philosophy. But only in my third semester, I was in a class with a teacher who mentioned that if you haven't done epistemology and 20th century philosophy, you won't get accepted to any philosophy masters. And this was a shock that I didn't have this available to me, because UCU gives us very open guidelines about what we can choose in our curriculum. But oftentimes job recruiters and masters ask for specific courses in our curriculum. And this is all information that is out there if you search for it, but no one's going to search for that in their first year. And yet, if they miss out on specific courses, there's a high chance that many UCU students in the past have gotten a diploma that just doesn't do the one thing that they wanted it to do, because the information was not readily available to them. So I'd like to propose to create a document within which this information per master's or future career path is available, of just which courses are preferred to take at UCU so you can really compete in the future.
So this is one.
If I may respond to that, I think one of the great sometimes causes of stress and also a big influencer of our academic culture here at UCU is the uncertainty that the nature of our program gives to people who want to get into the masters, want to get into the job. And I think I was talking with Irene about this the other day, that might actually be a factor why so many people find it so irrationally important to have super high grades, right? There's a lot of people here at UCU who, when they get a B, they're immediately very scared, whereas a B is a perfectly fine, good grade. But I think that also comes from that fear that, if you have a diploma, that doesn't necessarily say you have a specific skill set that would apply to a certain kind of next level trajectory, that you need some kind of overall high mark, high grade, high number on your diploma in order to get anywhere. And I think that that's something that comes with our education setup here, but that can be somewhat relieved by just giving students indeed more guidance on what masters are out there and how can they get into them. Not necessarily from their first year that they need to stress about, I need to find something after this, because we want students to be able to be free and explore and do whatever without being set on a specific course, because that's the nature of our education, that's our philosophy. But I do think that at least for every track there should be information. If you do the philosophy track, this is what you need for philosophy. Also in economics, if you want to do an economics master, in 9 out of 10 master's programs you need to do a course in econometrics, not a course we offer here at UCU, so you need to take it at USE. So for tracks like that, basically for every track, say if you want to get into the basic masters that would follow in this subject, this is what you need to do.
Thank you. And the last person missing was you. I hope that's good. Yeah. So I would actually like to drill down into a point that you were making before, and it is this about giving people information about their masters. And just to play a devil's advocate here and start a conversation, it seems like a tall order. There's a bunch of careers that you could follow, and there are very specific requirements for different areas. For instance, just in economics, you can follow a bunch of different masters, and each has different requirements and different expectations. So I've heard the idea of a document. I've heard the idea of giving people information. But how exactly would you do this? And what do you think would be the best option to make sure that everyone with almost infinite diversity of desires that people have here, that you're actually helping everyone achieve it and not giving cookie cutter solutions that won't help people? So if anyone has a point on that.
Oh, yeah.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Oh, nice. It's hard to see when a specific person is addressed from the screen. But my plan for a database would be definitely to spread out the web as much as possible towards people who actually know what they're talking about. Because obviously I can scroll as many websites as I want to look at future careers, but it's not going to help unless we really start reaching out to alumni who actually have found careers in these paths, teachers who know what the current state of affairs is, heads of department might even have more information, students about what exactly they would want in the future. So UCU has a very wide network, and all Ask really has to do is not do all the research themselves, but all Ask would have to do is really reach out to all these people, collect the information, and then update it as much as possible to make sure that everything is present. So as long as you have the communicational skills at the ready, then this should not be too much of a hassle, because the information is there, we just need to gather it.
Can I respond to that?
Of course.
I know it's not really related to my position. I agree with Sam and also with Elisa. I think that a lot of the information that we need is indeed...
It's just cut off.
No. I think a lot of the information that we need is indeed already available if it is about courses and masters and all of that kind of stuff, or if it is about other things on the workings of UCU. However, I do think that it's quite difficult for people to actually look into that, so I think that the teachers can actually play a very good role in this. If I, for example, think back at my intro to econ class, I know that Kim Zwitserloos also always really stresses what is important for economics. For example, the example that Launus just mentioned, we already knew that we probably would have needed econometrics for our economics track, because Kim already mentioned it in our first class. So I think that's something very important that teachers can they only have to spend maybe 15 minutes on this with the introduction of the course maybe, or maybe in a later stage of the introductory course, and actually make people aware of the fields that they have experienced in that course, and what that looks like and how they can actually continue in that field.
Yeah, I would agree, because I think the people in the field, they know what you need to do, right? So it's the first source of information, to get back to sort of Sam's point, would be teachers, I think. And from there, maybe if we miss specifics, we could say alumni, things like that. But I get your point, Alberto, about not being able to accommodate for all the different wishes and needs of students. And I think there's an important point here that we shouldn't try to give them a sort of alternative baby steps guide to what they need to do, because that one might become readily outdated, might be too simplified, and might encourage them not to look for things themselves. But I would definitely indeed encourage teachers to talk about what you need to do to get into related master's programs, and encourage tutors to really set a standardized time of when do you need to start thinking about masters. And also, and this is a slightly different conversation, but if people find out that they still need some requirements, have a bit of a looser policy in terms of staying an extra semester on if you really need those credits, because currently that's a sort of hidden rule where you can in some cases do it, but the management team doesn't really want to be too open about it. And I feel like that's a policy that ought to change, because I feel like it's putting a lot of stress on students that just isn't there in other Dutch student programs, where they can stay on for another semester and just get the courses, get the credits that they need to with an easy mind to get into a master's degree that they want.
This actually creates the opportunity for an important conversation in the role of Ask, which is that UCU places a lot of priority on the graduation rate at the 3-year mark, and I think a few of you have some ideas on this. So Lauren's pointed out, part of the reason management doesn't really want people to know this is to keep that number really high.
That's true.
Well, I'm speculating as well, but what are some ideas that you guys have on this?
If I could step in again.
Yeah.
I think that it's important for people to not be like super stressed because they've taken the wrong courses, or I think that we should be somehow flexible with that. However, I am not in favor of the plan to make it very accessible to have an extra semester at UCU, or maybe 2 extra semesters for that matter. I know that it is already the case for people that have, for example, mental health problems or other problems to extend their curriculum or to lower their workload. And I think that this should be more easy for other students to do so as well. For example, for students that have picked the wrong courses, so to say. But I want to stress that I don't want to necessarily institutionalize this. I don't want it to make. I don't want it to be very easy to add an extra semester, because I think it is part of UCU's to also make space for a whole new generation of students in our classes to also get that more new energy, and I think it's also good actually to keep the ratings up, because I think that excellence is one of our points, and I think we should keep that up as well.
If I could briefly respond to Irene, I think when we talk about institutionalization of this rule, for me it's not so much about ease of getting an extension, but more about clarity, which there currently is not, and I think that's a major point that can lead to stress for students. I think there should be standard guidelines as to when you can, when you cannot have an extra semester off. Extra semester onto your studies, onto your 3 years. Have some kind of standardized application procedure for it. Have tutors recommend it when it's necessary, so that students just know what they're up for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
So
Yeah,
can you
go
again?
ahead, Sam.
I think and I'm very interested in this extra semester idea at UCU, because, but also not institutionalized where it's accessible always to everyone. But I think UCU, at its core, is really a place to grow as much as possible and challenge yourself to take on new things. And sometimes 3 years just doesn't allow for that fully. So I could picture that there's the possibility of students having courses that they really like, but not having enough time to really dive into the material and really get the most out of it, and that they might want to do 3 courses per semester and do an extra semester onto that. I could also picture that students would actually want to try some extra courses after already actually having met the requirements to graduate, and really want to push themselves to get a broader perspective. I think for these projects that there definitely should be a 4th semester. I think it's very difficult to make sure that there aren't people who simply want to have an easier time academically and therefore add another semester onto there. So it's difficult to kind of balance these 2 things, because if students really want to go for more growth in that semester, then I think it's okay that these students take up spots that might allow for more students in the future to come. Because if we're honest, we could allow some more spots. Many classes are not filled, and housing on campus is not an issue. There are many free apartments. But I do think that we need to be very careful, and I get management's fear there that it doesn't become a standard because it's chill to just do an extra semester on there.
Thank you, Sam.
If I can just clarify for 1 second, there was the point there about taking 3 courses in 1 semester. That really looks like the flexibilization issue. I would just like to make clear for people that that's a different discussion, and that with the flexibilization concept, it's about getting 60 credits per year. It's not about having fewer courses in your semester and then making your entire stay at UCU longer. That's a different discussion that we could have, but it's not part of flexibilization.
That's true. I'm also in for a flexibilization.
But just for clarification.
That's just for even more freedom if we want to consider that. But that's indeed a different discussion.
Okay, thank you. And Irene mentioned something that's, and this is really a bit of a scary conversation that people don't like to have, but I was listening in my statistics class today, and this relates to a point of the graduation rate, that around 40% of people at UCU graduate cum laude. Mm-hmm. It's quite odd, and the point that the teacher was making is that it seems that the grades are somehow being inflated. And that's a very, you mentioned excellence before, so that's an interesting issue, and I think that listeners would like to know your points on that.
Yeah, actually, I know that in 2017, 48% of the students graduated cum laude, and 84% graduated with honors, which is a grade above 3.0. I think this is a high number that we can objectively establish that. However, it's a difficult thing on what to do with that. I mean, on the one hand, I think we are all working very hard. I think we are intelligent. We are also deserving the grades that we get because, I mean, we all went through a selection. And I think that the grades also suit us. And also, if we're talking about masters, I think these grades represent the work that we do compared to other university students that go to other more like normal universities, if you want to put it like that. So I think that should be taken into account if we have this discussion.
Yeah. Does anyone else have a point, Elisa?
I just wanted to tie it back to a point that Laurens made before, that he said that a lot of students really beat themselves up about grades because they think it will compensate for the kind of lack of like formal line because of how many courses we're allowed to choose and how we can really freely establish our own curriculum. And I think maybe it should be made clearer what exactly, sorry, my English is currently malfunctioning, that it should be made clearer what the relationship is between the cum laude distinction or the graduation with honors, Jesus, and the courses or / the preparation for what comes beyond that is there, because I feel like this point is not made very clear. Basically what I am saying is that students should be more aware of what the work that they put into reflected in the distinctions, that these two things should not be conflated. Sorry, I completely lost my point. I am very sorry.
No worries.
Whatever.
We can cut out. It's not
Yeah.
live.
Live?
No,
what? This is live?
What is
Why
live?
would you tell me that now?
We still have the rest of the show, so don't worry about it. And do interject at any point if you get it back. We should move on though. We still have listener questions we haven't gotten to. So now, before moving on to that though, I would like to give the opportunity to Irene to answer a question that I asked to Gideon yesterday. They're both running for Student Assessor, and the question is, what makes you different from your competition? Now, when you have all the candidates in the room, it's pretty easy to just on your own compare them. But in this case, since they're in separate broadcasts, it's good for you to be able to have a chance to talk about it. And Gideon already did, so it's only fair. So, Irene.
Yeah, thanks. I think in general, this is a very hard question to answer. I think, however, that Gideon did a very good job yesterday. And I agree with him on multiple points. I think, first of all, that the content of our campaign overlaps in quite a lot of points. We're both all for flexibilization and for increasing intrinsic motivation, but also for increasing interdisciplinarity. And for example, he also puts forward the idea of more honor or student-led programs. So in our content, there are some differences, but they're not very big. However, I do think that that he is more idealistic, as he also said that yesterday, and I'm more of the pragmatic type of person. So he has a lot of big ideas, and I always like to think more, pragmatically, as I said. And aside from that, of course, just like all of us, we all have different personalities. But I think that's really up to the voter to decide on who they feel more comfortable with and who they think that can present them best. In that sense.
Thank you. And that actually creates another opportunity, because I saw in more than one campaign statement, and of some of you here, that point about intrinsic motivation. So you already commented on it, so if maybe someone else wants to mention what their ideas are in this point.
On intrinsic motivation?
Yeah.
So in this aspect, to tie it back to what was said, I'm more like Gideon in the sense that I think of big ideas, but then I think I can find very pragmatic ways to implement this if I were on the board. But I definitely think that our intrinsic motivation, we should have a lot of it, because most of us come to UCU because we're interested in a lot of things. But then we simply feel like we need to produce all these things in a very short amount of time. And then suddenly our entire college experience just becomes about producing things instead of actually learning the material, which should be the main focus. And I think one way to put the focus back on the actual learning of things is to shift the focus of courses from the weekly schedule, which is now a very important part of knowing exactly which reading is going to take place when, to more learning goals. So we know that if we get a course, this is the end where we need to end up. We need to learn these things, but then we can either just let's stick to the plans that the teacher made, or try to find alternate means of getting towards the same end. So as long as the teacher thinks that this is also actually a way to get to the same end, of course. So we can actually tailor some aspects of our curriculum to our own preference, which has major benefits for intrinsic motivation, as much psychological research has shown, but it also makes that we start to really conceptualize courses as changes we need to bring about in ourselves, as opposed to a list of things we need to do to just go through the motions to get credit.
Okay, can I jump into that? Because I found a way to tie it back into the whole honors thing I mentioned before. With intrinsic motivation, it's for learning's purpose, essentially, very boiled down. And I think that a lot of people here are stressing about getting like a high GPA to graduate with honors to get on later. And I think the focus should be taken back from that, like Sam said, and more towards like actually learning learning and internalizing, especially what the courses are about. Because if that happens and it's less focused on GPA or graduating with honors, because then you know that you have the capacities or the capabilities to get into some master's degree later. And I think a lot of tension on this campus is also about this insecurity. So if there was more, intrinsic motivation, or if we could further that so that you learn for learning's sake, then you would have less anxiety, less problems to get into, to plan for the future, because you're just more aware of what you know rather than what GPA or what grade you've been working for.
Thank you. And does anyone else have a point on this? And if not, we can just move on to the questions that we've been receiving from our listeners. So, the first question is, for the position. Okay, sorry. I'm just reading this on the computer, and it's kind of far away. I'm sorry. Okay. So the question is, how do you think you can improve the engagement or lack? This is a long question, so kind of hold on for it.
That's fine.
I also asked it yesterday. Well, someone here asked it. How do you think you can improve the engagement or lack of engagement on campus, especially in regards to a lot of things ASC does? I find that this board is an extremely important one, but I feel like so few people actually reflect on that, and most of the info sessions and open meetings remain empty. This is a campus that we often promote as very active and engaged, but when it comes down to the most important part of university, academics, the stage remains empty. Just a concept, not really a specific question here to be answered, but I was interested.
Yeah, if I may go first, I think this ties into, I think we are a very active and engaged campus, but being very active and engaged also means that people are very busy, right? So I don't think there's a lot of students here walking in and out of dining hall who are like, I don't really have anything to do, but let's just chill in office hours for a second. That's not the mindset of most students here because of the busy nature of their schedule. But I think that Ask could put itself a little bit more out there. That's the opinion of many people, but that's also been the opinion of many Ask boards. And, you know, you gotta find your different ways of trying to do that. But what you also should not do is try to have students there for students' sake. You know, this is what often happens with a lot of UCSA committee events where there's a lot of stuff at the same time and you try to get everybody to all sorts of things because they're fun, but also they clutter up schedules for people even more. So I think it ties in back to the busy nature of students' lives on campus, and I think we could improve firstly on that as an end by the flexibilization issue, by giving people the opportunity to reduce their course load for one semester to 42 hours from 56, but also by giving students a better guidance as to how to manage your student life so that your calendar doesn't get completely filled up with all sorts of stuff. And maybe if we treat that as an end in itself, then that maybe automatically also becomes a means for people to become more involved with Ask, with their academics, because they actually have the time to think about that and not just think about what is the next thing they're going to go to.
Yeah, if I can just add on to that, also that a lot of academic structures are only like divulged in passing or not really explained to the students that take the specific courses on what their importance is. I'm like specifically currently thinking about track representatives, which are the students that take a specific track and are interested in it and just know as much as they can about it, and they are approachable and there for to be engaged with. But in my personal experience, the track representative only starts getting mentioned more frequently in like second or third degree level courses, and I think just telling people what kind of contacts people to contact there are and who to engage with, and make this information more, putting that information more to the forefront of their minds would already spark a little bit more engagement simply by them knowing where to go to be engaged.
Irene? Or
Yeah, but okay, thank you. No, I think it's one of the big things that we can do about engagement is literally putting Ask more out there, and also I think that a lot of people don't realize the power that Ask might have, because it's not like a superpower or anything, but there's so much stuff that the past boards have been changing. It may be little, it may be big, but there's so much stuff that they're working on and then they have an impact on. And we often, I think, as students, we do complain, but when it comes to, actually doing something about it, and believing that something is going to happen, we don't think that's going to happen. And I think we have to make ask more. I think it's quite visible, but more approachable, and that can start with intro week and everything. And I know that intro week is a fun, welcome to college week. But if you teach people that going to ask and just simply having a chat, just about normal stuff is okay. During the first couple of weeks, it's not going to be weird. I think later on, because now it's I've been having discussions with my peers, and we complain to each other about classes, and when it comes to office hours, let's go and talk with whichever AAO is representing that major. It's like, but nothing's gonna change. What are they gonna do? But there's actually a lot to do.
Yeah, it is not like. Oh yeah, Sam.
Oh yeah. Yeah, not exactly bouncing off of that, but I just want to get in on this point that yesterday what was mentioned was that theme week was a great success, and then the discussion developed more towards we should do more theme weeks, we should make sure we have more open meetings, we should have more events where we actively reach out to the campus. And I think that it turned into a quantity debate. And here I think that Ask can definitely be more approachable and get more student input by focusing on the quality side. Because the thing is, if you create too many of the same events, they become expendable after a while. The reason that Theme Week was such a success was indeed that it was once in the entire year for that sake. But it also had a clear focus. The students knew now it's Theme Week, now is the time to engage. And if students think, oh, I could engage always, then there's always going to be something on the agenda that's more important, some reading, some meeting, some party, and engagement can wait. So I think that the way in which Ask can, through events at least, can make sure that there's more engagement is to really put a focus on what type of events there are and make sure that they actually have something to contribute. Because if Ask's events itself don't have anything to contribute, then the student body is also not going to have anything to contribute. So I think there are some key moments in which we can get a lot of student input, but that we shouldn't overstress it, because that's actually simply going to drive input away if it's too constant and in your face. So I definitely go for quality over quantity here.
Thank you, Sam. I think Irene had a point.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of things that have been said. I think we can take Marco, the current chair, as a great example. He really is engaging. He goes out there, he talks to people. What do you think? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I think that short interactions only can already yield so much information. And I agree with Sam that the really qualitative feedback should be more focused and should be should not be stressed too much. For example, I know that my opponent, Gideon, is really about creating town halls, and although I think it's a nice idea and opportunity, I'm not sure if it will actually work that well, because you will see, similarly to what is happening now, that a certain amount of people will always show up, give the same amount of input, which is great, but I experienced, especially during this week, that when you just walk up to people, that firstly, they don't really know what Ask does and what it's able to change. For example, about the Student Assessor position, I think I asked 50 people and only maybe 5 of them actually knew what it was about. So I really increased the visibility in the sense that I want to make sure that people know what Ask does, and that can be done by short infographics or short catchy movies instead of long documents. But secondly, I noticed that people also, when you actually start the conversation with them, have so many ideas, and only a conversation of 5 minutes can already yield so much information. And again, I think that Marco does a great job in that sense, and I would love to continue doing that.
Thank you, Irene.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I may just, I think it's the most important point to take away from that is that it's really important to get people to know what Ask does and what they Ask really does as early on as possible. You know, maybe we could even have like an open book or whatever. But you know, because students might come in and think, oh, Ask is fun, but I don't really know what to do. So it's very important first that you tell them what is Ask, what do the people do, what different jobs do they have, and then show them on the long term constantly a sort of one glance view of these are the things we're working on, this is the progress we're making right now, so that students really know what Ask is doing at the moment and really know what subjects are important to them, and then they might just walk into the office and say, hey, I know you're working on this, I really think this about it, or you really think that about it. Or actually, you know, I've seen your list of goals that you want to do, but I feel like something that should be on there isn't on there, which can't just happen, you know. I mean, a lot of people, for instance, complain about research and context, things like that. So if they don't see Ask working on that, they're like, well, why is that? But if you actually go talk to someone like Marco, who took the academic curriculum, like the standardized stuff, as sort of a mini AAO job for himself, and he says, you know, these are things that are being revised every year, but it's not really working, so there's not a lot of spirit for it. So that's also a really important task, I think. Explains to them what Ask does, but also what Ask is not doing, because it's chosen not to do it. So people have a really clear overview of what's going on, where can I put in my influence, and why are they doing the things that they're doing right now.
Yeah, just as a matter of public service, before moving on to the next question, it's important to point out that the kind of work that Ask does is invisible. I mean, almost by definition, you know, if you dislike a course, you criticize it, it will change the next time around, and you will not repeat that course, and that happens with a lot of things. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that, oh, just throw your hands in the air, it's impossible to know if Ask is doing a good job or a bad job, but that you actually have to look for that information if you want to know, and you can't really judge without knowing that information. So it's really about not being discouraged by the fact that you're not seeing improvement. It's about seeking out that improvement, because I also said this in the last meeting. People can just send out an email. You know, I've sent emails to CAR, and they actually do the things that I propose them to do, because the people who run for these positions want to change. So I think that you've all been very clear in this, that you want to receive this kind of feedback, that you want people to come up and talk to you, and people hear that and they don't believe it, but I think you can all assure them that they should believe that, and just kind of a public service. But moving on to the next question. So we also had this yesterday. So what do you think is what importance do you place in the collaboration between Ask, UCSA, and CAR? And just more generally, on what do you think they should collaborate? Should they collaborate?
I think. Oh, do you want to go?
No, you should go.
Okay, I think that it is very important to collaborate between Ask, UCSA, and CAR. I mean, they're the three students' bodies, and I think there might be some overlap in the work that they do. For example, Intro Week is a very big thing that the three boards organize together, and the communication should be very good in that sense. However, it's also important to really distinguish the boards. I feel like sometimes students expect Ask to be sometimes a bit similar to AXA or to the UCSA in some matters, especially if you talk about their visibility, their approachability maybe. I think that Ask has a very different role in that. Of course, we should be visible and approachable. I think we all stress that very much. But it's not really that our task is only to organize events, for example, and only to be in the social life of UCU in that sense. And I think people should be aware of that difference. Another thing that I want to say is that I know that throughout the years, Ask has grown, especially if you compare to the UCSA. What I noticed when I came here at UCU, when CAR wasn't established yet, that is this. there were two boards, the social board and the academic board. And now there's one board for housing and campus issues as well. And I think that's a very important thing, that we should stand as three separate bodies, but which are working together and which are equally important and have their own individual tasks.
Yeah, I think, like Irene said, a lot of them have some things in common, and I feel like as a first year you come in, and I was talking with a lot of Hafis today, and they're like, "What's the difference?" And I was like explaining how different each of them are, what they do, and if you want to make it clear, it's basically, I think, housing, socials, and the academics. But I do think that it's important to collaborate to show a unity, as in we are all working to serve for each other, with each other, and I think that's an important thing, as in we are not rivals or anything. All boards are working together literally for the same thing, just making UCU better. Maybe CAR is more focused on campus, and ASC is more focused on academics, and UCSA is more focused on the social aspect and everything, but we are at the end all going for the same thing, and I think that's a nice unity we have on campus.
Thank you.
Yeah, what I want to add to that discussion is that there's not just overlapping subject matters, but there's also complementing skill sets and powers. So, for instance, one example when it comes to what the campus looks like, as well as not directly housing, but more campus management and public space, which is normally mostly a CAR subject matter, but it involves a lot of spending. So with the council, that's where 4 ASC members sit on. There was this year a new batch of money coming in from the quality agreements passed down by the government, and that money could also be spent on different kinds of campus equipment, like new picnic tables, things like that, things CAR is normally busy with. But ASC members, 4 of these ASC members who sit on the council, actually have the right of consent over new spending, all yearly budgets. It has to go through the council. Council can block it. Council can ask for changes in it. So you have to collaborate year round, so that you know that when CAR, for instance, has wishes, ASC can use its powers to make those wishes come true. And when ASC wants to organize new events, wants people to come to that, they might ask, hey, UCSA, you seem like you have a lot of experience with making events that people like and people want to go to. So you can use those complementing skill sets and powers to make your own objectives and realize them.
Thank you. And to move on to the next question. It's actually kind of a compound question, so I'm going to separate it. You've already mentioned some things, but I would like you to address something that has not been mentioned during this conversation, and it is, what is an initiative of ASC that you would like to continue?
I think what I want to continue is what they're doing about mental health, especially this year. A lot of work has been going on to balance the work-life thing going on here. We have a big academic stress culture, I'd like to call it, that it's a big thing, and it's almost like we're proud of it. It's really interesting. But I think this is, and then this after the not the theme week, but the input thing they did, it was assessed that everyone wants another student life officer, and this is something that they're looking into it right now. But speeding up this process, having a female representative, especially for as a student life officer, and I think it's really important, considering that for me, everyone has a different selective view, and you see this thing that is more interesting to you. And what I saw on campus, after a couple of weeks, was the mental health situation going on here, and how it's related to academics, campus, and social life. And this is one of the main things I'd really like to continue, because I respect that we've finally come to this conclusion, that we do that this is needed, and I think it's one of the ways that for mental health it's going to help a lot.
Anyone else in this point?
You can
Sam.
go, Sam.
One, it's not too big of a point, but one thing that I really like is it's moving towards in the UCU Council is that instead of having the Ask Chair be the Vice Chair, the Ask Chair will be the co-chair together with the faculty member of the UCU Council, which is Diana now, which I think is a good movement because if we're honest, students and faculty both play quite a symbiotic part in keeping the campus up. So that's something, and for the rest, a lot of things indeed in theme week, but also to implement a longer semester would be one of the things that I would like to see, since nowadays during the semester it's busy 24/7. There's no time to breathe and reflect on things. But then after the semester, there are 2 months of, well, nothing most of the time. So to have a longer semester with a reading week would just allow for some more space in there and have it more spread out. So those are 2 points I definitely want to see. And for the rest, to be honest, there are a lot of tiny things that the Ask Board has been doing that just need to be carried on throughout. And I think it's important to look at all of those things, but we can't really talk about them currently because it's just such a web of general activity that has been going on. But yeah, definitely continuity is the only way in which I can see Ask functioning for actual change that is not only on a surface level. So I'm very keen to start getting in on that continuity.
Thank you. And we're actually almost running out of time. So we're going to have our last question and then just send off by the end, so you can all just give your finishing statements. The last question is the second part of this question, which is, what do you think is a step in the right direction? Is there anything that you would actually want to shift maybe to a different perspective, or you get the point? What is the right direction, and is there anything that should be changed or adapted in the goals that are currently set out for Ask?
So you mean rather than something you want to continue, something you want to change in the way that Ask is currently
the way it's
doing,
phrased, I think it's either way.
Either way, okay. Yeah, well, if I'm speaking then anyway. So there's, as Sam said, there's a number of points. I think this Ask Board has been very good at introducing new little things, continuing the good things of the board before it as well. One thing that I would point out is just getting into classrooms like they do with midterm evaluations, where you can really, instead of just having people fill in like a form, like a survey for the course evaluations, just really during the course talk with them about how they feel that the course is going. So they're doing this for new courses now. I would also want to do it for existing courses with new teachers. I'm not sure if they do it already. But in general, expand the amount of courses that we're doing that for, because I think it's important that not only Ask members show their face in class, but also that we get some kind of real sense of what students think, because the course evaluations as they currently are with the form are a bit criticized sometimes by staff or by students that the questions are not clear, or it's not clear what an answer by a number of students means. So I think it's important that, Ask members have a limited amount of time, but that they are in classrooms more for these kind of evaluations. So I think that's really great.
Anyone else want to chime in on this question?
Yeah,
Sam.
definitely. So one of the things I think that is, well, actually the thing that I think is absolutely crucial for getting the college on the right direction, and that has been causing the college over the past years to move somewhat in a non-beneficial direction for just the better education that we can get, is to really start opening up about the fact that communication between different bodies in College Hall is just not what it should be. And this fact, if you ask any teacher about this or any staff member, they'll be able to complain for hours about what is happening in College Hall. But for some reason, no one is actually addressing this problem and talking with one another about how this is actually affecting the quality of education in many different levels. And I'm not saying that the blame is at any party in particular, because these are just things that happen to an institution when there are 20 years to develop bad habits. But there are some habits that we should definitely get rid of. And currently, many bodies feel kind of alienated from the management and frustrated with that. An example is that teachers simply... So in last year's teachers' satisfaction ratings, they actually rated their experience as very, just basically an F. So this translates to the classroom, because they have too little time to get everything done that is asked of them, and simply have too much, a too stressful life already, not enough time for family, etc. So they don't have extra time to invest in the curriculum. And on top of that, there's this huge feeling that they have nothing to say to the rest of the bodies in College Hall. So I think that one of the ways we could improve things like this, movements like this, is to really start opening up about what we could change to make sure that all bodies of the college feel included. Because until that has actually happened, we can talk about getting more teacher involvement or implementing all these beautiful changes as much as we want. But it's, if we're completely honest, all these changes would have been there already if much more of the communication was just happening properly. So I want to start getting these problems in plain sight so we can just see what is there to work on.
If I may have a quick response to this, because this obviously relates back to the UCU Council as well and their relationship with the board. And I recognize what Sam is saying. There's definitely been some systematic difficulties in communication between these kinds of governmental bodies at UCU. And that's not a problem that's going to go away easily, but I would be optimistic on 2 points. Firstly, for what I've noticed in the UCU Council, the more students speak up and talk to or lead the conversation in the council and talk to the management team, the better things seem to go, because they're often fresher, they're fresh-faced, they're new faces for the MT, they don't hold any old grudges or whatever, which is a tiny thing sometimes, but it can be annoying. And also they're just a lot more positive sometimes. And I think the people who are now on the council, from the students, staff as well, but definitely students as well, are great. Second thing is that links into flexibilization. What you also have to realize is that every hour of workload reduction for a student is also an hour of workload reduction for a teacher, or even more, because there's a lot of whatever. I'm not going to do the math. So if we can make sure that teachers don't have to spend so many hours, if flexibilization leads to teachers not have to spend so many hours on preparing classes, then they could spend more time on tutoring or performing all of their, because most teachers have like a lot of different functions within the college, and what often leads to miscommunication is just staff who's in different bodies just not having the time in their calendar to meet up and see each other. For instance, the UCU Council has only met the board twice this year, and that's not like an anomaly. That's regularly on a schedule that you only meet twice. So I think that there's room for improvement there. It's gonna be hard, but we're gonna have to seize every opportunity we get to get people into contact more and to relieve the hour pressure for teachers as well.
And we're almost out of time, and that means that it's time for a send-off. What I think should become clear to all of our listeners from listening to your conversation is how much stuff is on the agenda, right? You're all having really deep thoughts about this, and you all have a lot of ideas. And if you see the sum of what everyone is proposing, it's just this giant mountain, and just the task of prioritizing what to do and what not to do is just giant. And I think we should all be thankful that everyone who has decided and who might still decide to run for the Academic Student Council, and I think the same applies for any of the, especially for the big demanding roles of student governance, is that you are sacrificing a lot and you are putting a lot of thought into it. So I want to speak in the name of kind of UCU to say that we're grateful to you for running and for deciding to do this, to either take a course load reduction or to just power through a difficult semester. I did want to point out people still can throw their hat on the ring. We're not going to have another one of these shows, but there might be people who you will not be able to listen to in these programs who are also running, maybe not. But if that is the case, please look for them and talk to them and read their statements or whatever you need to do, because they might also be good candidates, even if they put their hat in the ring a bit later. And yeah, with that, we're thankful. We expect a lot from you once you get there. It's not a free pass.
Sure.
And really, this is the time for you to say goodbye and just give like a brief final statement for this. So go ahead. Whomever wants to
thanks.
start. Yeah.
Thank you very much first of all for letting us speak here. I am very much looking forward to next year, if I get elected, to represent your voices, to also start working with all of these people with great ideas. And I really hope that you trust me with this, because I know that I'm competent of voicing and summarizing your interests and representing them in College Hall and making sure that they will get through. And really, I will really work hard for that. And I'm really excited about that as well. So please go vote. That's one of the most important things. Please vote for the persons that you trust the most and that you know that will do a great job.
Thank you. Next.
First of all, thank you, UC Radio.
So let me say your name so people remember the voices. That was Irene, and now we're going with Aysu.
Yeah, so thank you guys first for having so much time and just talking. And then whoever's listening, thank you for sparing 1 hour or how much you listened and just getting to know us a little bit. And what I want to say lastly is just, I think I'm a quite passionate and a hardworking person, and I would love to serve you and work towards a better UCU, to be honest. And also, I would really like to stress the fact that please do vote. It's not that you vote for me or anything, but it's important that we all vote. So, like College Hall or other bodies running around knows that people do care about us. People do care about how academics run in this school. Because if you don't vote, it simply looks like it's unnecessary. So thank you very much and have a wonderful night.
Just going back to the point that you made, Alberto, about there being a mountain of stuff that the next ASC board is going to do or has to do and has to prioritize in. I think when you're a voter, that's why picking the right persons is so important. It's not just a random choice, because you really have to find those people who care about the issues that speak to you and who you're going to trust with getting the right solutions and getting the right progress on those issues. That's not just a given. And there is a lot of stuff out there, and some things have to be picked up, other things have to be let go, which is why it's important that you get yourself informed. You go to Facebook platforms of people when they have the Minds Lounge for AO on Facebook. You read up on the things you need to do. Check the campaign statements if you haven't done that yet. They're still in downstairs dining hall. Get yourself informed. Find out who speaks to you. Find out who cares about the issues that speak to you, and find out who you trust in executing those wishes of the students that you feel are important to you and will actually make education better, not just for you, but also to future generations of students at UCU.
Yes, shouldn't have let you go first because you said a lot of things. But what I wanted to really stress is that helpful in the process of voting is just go back to yourself, do a little bit of introspection, and think about the things that you have stumbled upon during your academic career here. What are the things you would have wanted to have seen addressed further? What are the things you think need to change? And then go look for those things in the election statements, or go talk to a candidate you think might have that in their election statement, because the election statements are quite brief, and ask them to elaborate, because your experience is what the Academic Student Council is there to represent. And if you go back over what you've lived here and carry that to the future, it can become a continuous process. So yes, do vote, find a person, people that you think best represent that. And yes, thank you for listening. Thank you for having us, UC Radios.
Yeah, and Sam?
Yeah, the final word then. Yeah, so I think most of the stuff of go vote, etc., has been said. One thing to say on that is that keep also in mind the competency of the person you're voting for, because obviously a person with the best ideas in the world, but not the competency won't get a lot done. But a candidate with good ideas and competency will make it far. But yeah, honestly, this has just been so much fun. That's just what I wanted to leave with, because I've been working very hard over the past months on these ideas. I actually have released 3 videos at the moment. I'll be releasing more in which I just talk about these ideas that I've expressed now, with all funky effects and edits and stuff like that to make it all nice and approachable. But yeah, I'm really, really excited to just simply see what we can get done next year in the board with these amazing people.
This has been the second edition of the Academic Students Council Elections Broadcast. I've been your host, Alberto Delgado. I'm here with, I'm going to call you a producer, Sanchika Aurora. Did I say that right? I think I botched that horribly. Thank you all for tuning in, and may your choice be wise. This is on UCU Radio. Thank you for listening.